I'm Teisha with Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, October the 23rd, 2013. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met today with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Rome, where the two discussed the state of Israeli-Palestinian peace talks as well as the situation with Iran. During a joint press conference with Kerry just ahead of their scheduled 7-hour meeting, Netanyahu reiterated his stance that Iran's nuclear program must be totally dismantled and warned against any partial deal.
I think a partial deal that leaves Iran with these capabilities is a bad deal. Iran must not have a nuclear weapons capability. This means that they shouldn't have centrifuges for enrichment. They shouldn't have a plutonium heavy water plant, which is used only for nuclear weapons. They should get rid of the amassed fissile material, and they shouldn't have underground nuclear facilities underground for one reason, for military purposes.
Netanyahu also told Kerry that he agrees with him that the goal is to get a deal with Iran peacefully. Secretary of State Kerry, meanwhile, addressed the press conference where he called on Iran to show that its actions were peaceful as it claims.
He will pursue a diplomatic initiative, but with eyes wide open, aware that it will be vital for Iran to live up to the standards that other nations that have nuclear programs live up to, as they prove that those programs are indeed peaceful. We will need to know that actions are being taken which make it crystal clear, undeniably clear, fail-safe to the world that whatever program is pursued is indeed a peaceful program. No deal is better than a bad deal. But if this can be solved satisfactorily, diplomatically, it is clearly better for everyone. And we are looking for an opportunity to be able to do that.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, who had landed in Rome last night, also addressed the Iran issue when meeting last night with Italian Prime Minister Enrico Letta, telling him that it must be ensured that Iran won't have nuclear weapons capabilities. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is also in Europe this week. Abbas told a German paper today that he is willing to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu at any time in order to advance the peace process. Abbas told German newspaper Rheinische Post that this was the last chance for both sides to reach an agreement, adding that no real progress had been made so far. Abbas also expressed once again his stance that Israeli building in the settlements must stop and that it undermines the peace process. Meanwhile, the Associated Press reports that last night at a Security Council debate at the United Nations, Palestinian ambassador to the UN Riyad Mansour accused Israel of taking advantage of the peace talks in order to step up settlement building. Mansour said despite the genuine efforts being exerted, tangible progress remains elusive and hopes are diminishing. Israeli ambassador to the UN Ron Prosor rejected the statements from Mansour, saying the real obstacle to peace is the Palestinians' insistence on the right of return for millions of Palestinian refugees and their descendants to what is now Israel. Prosor called that demand a euphemism for the destruction of the State of Israel and a major hurdle to peace. Ambassador Prosor also spoke at the UN Security Council last night about Iran, warning that the Islamic Republic's new president, Hassan Rouhani, was, quote, like the emperor with new clothes, cloaking himself as a moderate, when in fact, Iranian radicalism remains clear to the naked eye. Prosor also repeated Netanyahu's warning not to ease up on sanctions towards Iran, but rather that pressure must continue until Iran agrees to play by the rules. Prosor said, make no mistake, the Iranian program is not for peaceful purposes. When negotiating with Iran, the international community, he said, must, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, distrust, dismantle, and verify. UN Undersecretary General Jeffrey Feltman said at the Security Council debate that negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians have picked up the pace. He said that talks were an emerging opportunity for diplomacy between both sides, saying we should do all we can to take advantage of the opening that now exists. A newspaper in Kuwait reports that Israeli warplanes destroyed a shipment of missiles that were on their way to being delivered to Hezbollah near the Lebanese-Syrian border. Kuwaiti paper Al Jarida quotes a senior Israeli official saying that Israel Air Force fighter jets bombed the missile shipment 2 days ago. And while Israeli media is running the story, they are also noting that the report has not been confirmed by any other news source. A Palestinian-American woman was arrested yesterday on immigration charges for allegedly lying about her conviction for a deadly terror attack over 40 years ago in Israel. 66-year-old Rasmia Odeh was arrested yesterday morning at her home outside of Chicago. She had been sentenced to life in prison in Israel for her involvement in a terror attack in 1969 that involved placing bombs at a crowded Jerusalem supermarket as well as at a British consulate. One of the bombs in the market detonated. It killed 2 people and injured several others. Israel said at the time that the attack was planned by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Odeh was sentenced to life for her part in the attack in 1970, but was released by Israel 10 years later as part of a prisoner exchange of 76 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for an Israeli soldier captured in Lebanon. U.S. authorities now accuse Odeh of lying on her immigration forms, answering no to a question that asks if you have ever been arrested, convicted, or been in prison. Odeh immigrated to the U.S. from Jordan in 1995. She became a naturalized citizen of the U.S. in 2004. According to the Associated Press, Odeh was freed after posting bond yesterday and has been ordered not to leave the country and to report to a courtroom in Detroit on November the 1st. The Anti-Defamation League yesterday criticized the Qatari sponsors of the FINA Swimming World Cup held in Qatar this week for removing an Israeli flag from public display. The Israeli flag was reportedly removed from outside the Hamad Aquatic Center during the International Swimming Tournament, which was held in Doha on October the 20th and 21st. When Israel's swimming champion Amit Ivri competed, her name appeared next to a blank white flag in on-screen graphics. However, when Ivri was awarded the silver medal in the 100-meter individual race, the Israeli flag was raised inside the aquatic center for the ceremony. ADL National Director Abe Foxman said that while it was notable that Israeli athletes competed in the competition in Qatar, it was unacceptable that officials caved to pressure and complaints and whitewashed Israeli symbols from the competition. Foxman said international sporting federations who have guidelines mandating that all qualifying athletes be permitted to compete must also now ensure that host countries guarantee that all participants and national teams, regardless of their nationalities, be treated equally, and that their national origin be fully recognized. Organizers of international sporting events, he said, cannot permit public opinion to politicize competitions nor sully competitors. The New York Times reports that American University Texas A&M is set to announce the creation of a new campus in Israel. The branch of the university will be located in Nazareth and will be called Texas A&M Peace University. It would be the first American university with a campus in Israel. Texas Governor Rick Perry, whose alma mater is Texas A&M, is in Israel this week and is set to join leaders from the school as well as Israeli officials, including reportedly Israeli President Shimon Peres, to make the announcement. Nazareth, located in northern Israel, is made up mainly by Arab Israelis. According to the Times, the university said that students and teachers at the campus in Israel would include Arabs and Jews, as well as international students and faculty. And a delegation of representatives from a Canadian university signed academic cooperation agreements with 2 Israeli universities this week. Officials from the University of Montreal, UDM in Quebec, signed agreements with the Technion and with Haifa University this week during a visit to Israel, which was coordinated by Canada's Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. The delegation also began discussions on possible future collaborations with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Tel Aviv University, the Weizmann Institute, Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, and Bar Ilan University.
He walked in, he looked a little dour.
And finally, tonight on Shalom TV, author Larry Ruttman joins Mark Golub on L'chaim to talk about Jews in baseball and his book, American Jews and America's Game. That's tonight at 9 here on Shalom TV and shalomtv.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, October the 23rd, 2013. I'm Teisha Bader.